Hey, it's Thursday morning, and do you know what that is? It's time for us to be lighting the candle and making the world work, right? So, for you at home, if this is your first time tuning in, we are a bunch of crackpots that will not accept that the world cannot get any better than it has been. And so we're advocating through language and conversation and dialogue to bring empowerment to everyone who's involved in the conversation. And that especially includes those who cannot speak this, but you can go into your own communities and friends and families and continue the discussion with them. And that's what we would hope for you. Empowerment, enlightenment, a bunch of E words we're into. And that said, I'm Bill Carell, and we've been doing this for, I don't know, better part of 6 months now and having a ball with it. So I'm going to pass it around for everyone to take a moment and just kind of get here, you know, say what you need to say. And at the same time, what I'd like to talk about today, let's go into a really broad domain. And the password is family. Ken, would you like to take it from there? Actually, forgive me, Shelley, since you were Johnny on the spot on the call this morning, you win the Cupid doll.
Yeah, the first time I'm first, I'm usually last, as far as getting to the call, not in chronological order there. But anyway, so family. So I'm Shelley Kohler, and am I diving into family, or are we diving, just going around the horn?
Well, the way this works, if you care to, it's anything you want to talk about. And the challenge that I put out there was for us to start discussing family while you're, you know.
No,
that's a long answer. Yes.
So apropos, you know, a family takes on as you said, a very broad. It's very, very broad, very general, very inclusive, all of that. And for me, apropos, because I have several friends whose elderly parents have recently come down with COVID and pneumonia COVID. Yeah. So there's, I think, you know, as we look at family, and it ever evolves, you know, from when we were very little to when we get older, but even inside of a pandemic or crisis like this, right? What do we look to? What do we clutch to? What are the pieces that really matter? You know, I also have family that have been estranged for many years that are coming back together. So, you know, it does strange things to one, the mind, and as well really gets you present to what's important. You know, you may not like your brother, and he maybe did some really crappy things when you were younger to you, and you still don't have to like him today, but he is your family, right? And there's that piece of bonding. You know, blood is thicker than water, always will be, but then water can be pretty thick. So I guess in saying all that, you know, family is the one we are given. Another family is the one we choose.
All great thoughts. Anything else?
Well, that's it for now.
Well, thank you for being number one.
Thank you for having me, number one.
So it's kind of a toss-up between Ken and Vanessa. I'm not exactly sure who was number two because I turned the room on and then I went and answered the door. Whoever's feeling like next is an appropriate spot for you. Okay, Vanessa.
Go, Vanessa. Go, Vanessa.
Oh, and I said, go for it, Ken. Okay. All right, I'll do the ladies first thing, okay?
Awesome.
Thank you. I agree with Shelley. It is a very broad. I'm Vanessa Lewis, just to introduce myself quickly. And I agree that with what Shelley said about family being a very broad topic. I know, Bill, that's how you prefaced it. And I agree with the last part of what she said, that, you know, you can't choose your family. No, I'm sorry. Now you're going to have to repeat that. Can you please repeat what you said at the end, Shelley, about choosing the family and having a blood family?
Yeah, you can't choose the family that you were given, but you can choose to have a different family. And I don't
Oh,
remember
okay.
exactly how I said that, to be honest with you. We'll have to listen to the tape later.
Now you're acting
Right.
like me. I don't ever remember once it leaves my lips.
But there is the family we're given and the family we choose.
Yeah. So I agree 100% with that. And I remember how last week we were talking a little bit about, well, our topic was on love, which is another very, very broad topic, if not more broad. And in certain, some of us grow up with families where we're told that, we love each other and this is our family, and family sticks together no matter what. But then there's a lot of there's some things that might test that loyalty, and I think this is, as we get older, more than just discovering our own individuality, and maybe we start to separate based on our own beliefs. And then again, I think a lot of us can agree, especially as we get older, Shelley, with what you said, that you can't choose the family that you're born into, and that's the only family for so long. But then you can certainly choose your family as you get older. You can choose who you want, and then of course maybe perhaps that changes the definition of family from being everybody of the same blood relation and even DNA relation, if you will, or growing up under the same household, if you will, to becoming, who you choose in your circle. And it could be maybe a circle that, is within your comfort zone. Maybe it's like in the example of like some kind of a fellowship family or a club that you belong to. It's people that all have the same thinking patterns or are like-minded. Family is someone that, when you grow up and have create a family of your own, then you're back to that blood family. But then you've got children, and then you become grandparents and extended children, extended family, and so-and-so marries into the family, your family expands, and or again, just have, maybe some of us have fur babies that are our family. So again, family has a very broad definition. But it's a word. I know sometimes we talk about, I'll leave it here, and then I definitely want to hear what everyone else has to say. But I know also sometimes in previous podcasts, we've talked about the feeling of words. And I know that the feeling, the word family, there was a time in my life when the word family, made the hair stand up in the back of my neck, or I didn't get a very good feeling from it. But I definitely enjoy and love the word family very much. And I think it's a really important word in our society and in our culture. And I'm talking about both the family I was born into and I'm blood related to, and the family that, which I will forever love, and then the family that I've chosen throughout my life, or who has chosen me, that I will also forever love. So family to me means love. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Awesome. Great start. So, Ken?
Yeah, I like what Vanessa was saying. It's I don't know. I think it's just kind of interesting, people's relationship to the idea of family and what they associate with that. And so much of it is experiential, and it's different for each of us. Like even blood, I mean, that's, if you were adopted, like I'll tell you guys that story sometime. I was adopted in my 30s. So, so there's not, believe it or not, there's actually not a lot of blood relatives. I have some, but many I never met. So, so that gives you a different feeling of fantasy of family from someone who's, they've had more the traditional, kind of upbringing where, they can follow back for generations and stuff. So, but what's always interesting to me is the way people use family in what would be considered non-traditional contexts, like as a business, as a sports team, some community that they share ideology with or interest with, so what's the curiosity to me is more what's behind that? What are the common connections that people find that they express through the feeling of family?
Great.
Anything else, Ken?
Nope.
I promise there will be. I know you. Miss Lisa.
I was thinking Ken was right with his little Freudian slip of fantasy.
I wanted to hear more about that
Oh,
too.
yeah, I heard that too.
Absolutely.
That was pretty cool.
Because if you break it down, I think a lot of people have a fantasy about what family should be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
and a lot of people are extremely disappointed in what family is, in either on and off throughout the years. Or, I mean, I've been fortunate that I find family to be a very, even though there's dysfunction, I find I think I'm fortunate to grow up in a very nice family, and I kind of proved it to myself when I moved to California for a couple of years and really missed being around family. But then I agree with everybody saying that there's the family you were born into, and then there's the family you choose afterwards. And like Ken said too, it doesn't matter. There's whatever the common connection is, it creates that sort of feeling for you. But I also think like blood family, for me especially, it's like the only time not only time, but where I can feel mostly unconditional love, because I will forgive them just about anything, even if it's a fight that lasts a little while longer. But we'll let each other back into our lives again because we almost have to. It's like they're there, so I might as well forgive them now. But then the other extension, like Ken was talking about, because my nephew was adopted from the Ukraine, and I could never understand how an adopted child could fit into and feel that to be part of a family until I experienced it, because that boy is no less blood of mine than my other blood niece and nephew. And I mean, it's hard to explain till you feel it. So I think family also your idea of it can change throughout your experiences of your life too. So now I've expanded mine to include all that. And I mean, and then God knows how much expansion can happen to include all of humanity like we want to do. So, so family, I agree with everybody saying it's a broad term. It's very subjective and constantly changing. I think like a lot of our words in the language, especially with what we're going through.
Yeah. That's great. Anything else, Lisa?
Nope, that's it.
So this is really interesting to me, and the essence of languaging family has to come from nurture. It's not an innate sense that we get when we're born. For instance, the story of Romulus and Remus being left in the wolf den and being raised by wolves. Necessarily, their family became those wolves. And I think of this whole conversation of family in terms of, and again, as you mentioned, Lisa, this is something that is constantly changing, being upgraded, downgraded. However, it's a thing, if you will, that a lot of us don't spend much time examining. Mm-hmm. That family becomes this sense of something that isn't necessarily spoken and shows up like a whole bunch of feelings. When they talk about holidays, where you get to recreate the misery of your youth with the original cast, that whole idea, that the feeling that you have all about my brother Huma, my other brother Huma, and my sister and my mother, and there's a lot of us there. So I think of that in terms of I'm going to talk about immigrants for just a minute and what I've seen and experienced personally with large immigrant families, especially first generation. They tend to be very family centric. They tend to be, in my experience, very interested in passing the family legacy on, to their progeny and grandchildren. And what it boils down to in a lot of cases, it's a matriarchal kind of a thing that gets put together because the mother is constantly telling the children what's great about their dad, or what was great about her father, or what was great about their grandfather, et cetera, et cetera. So the conversation has less to do with conflict and bad interactions. They're there too, but there is this unshakable commitment to family first. And no matter what happens outside this house, the family is the family no matter what. So I don't know if I talked about this before, but I read a trilogy when I was, I don't know, in high school, 14, 15 years old, by, it's called The Trees, the Field, and the Town. And it was all about what happens, to the family unit as affluence starts to come into the picture. And people's lives are not about being, centric around something from a survival standpoint. And juxtaposing that to the inner city ethnic families, the Polish, the Italians, the Germans, the Irish, it was a dangerous place to be identified first as a certain ethnicity, and then second of all being that ethnicity in your bloodline. So the whole idea of family, comes back to the whole, I don't know, Romeo and Juliet story, West Side Story, all of these things that have nothing to do with going out and interacting with a manufacturing job during the daytime. There's some opportunity to define with your relatives what your family actually is for you. And we used to do that. I'm thinking about even into my early 20s and 30s when we got together 6, 8, 10 times a year for different holidays and birthdays and stuff. I am lucky to lay eyes on many in my family once every 2 to 3 years. The time has completely changed. And so I had absolutely no idea that I was going to say this before you guys all said what you said. But obviously there's a deep commitment inside of me, where love gets generated from. I love my family to pieces. And with me, they have an automatic, no non-cancelable get out of jail free card. Okay. As Lisa said, I don't care what they do or how they do it. They can always come home, or they can accept me into their home. And I think, there's that whole side of it. And then there's the whole side of it that when you're here, you're like family. Has anybody ever told you that when you go to their house? And I go, for God's sake, please don't treat me like family, okay? Not interested in that at all. Treat me with respect. So the whole thing in terms of what is it? It is really like nailing Jello to the wall. And again, I say it's a function of where you are at this moment. Vanessa?
No, I'm sorry. When you hit on a good metaphor, I love it, whether it's cliche or not, but I like that. Nailing Jello to the wall.
It is cliche.
I like that.
Yeah. One you don't hear often is nailing gravy to a wall. Even nailing a brownie to the wall is not that easy.
Oh, you tried it?
I've got one right here. I'm more than happy to demonstrate if you like.
I'm sure chocolate chips or nuts might help a little bit.
Yeah, so the whole idea is, that sense or that feeling, the all about, whatever it is that we're talking. And when you generally think of family and you generally think of family history, how does that make you feel?
So, I sit here and it is absolutely a feeling, right? And it's also an interpretation of, what I want family to be. And if it's not that, then, it's something dysfunctional. It's like we have been given this template, and if it doesn't look like that in our minds, right? It's the feeling. It's kind of like, okay, well, that's not the family that I should be a part of, or that doesn't happen in my family. And then we set out to create the family that we think we should have had, or just kind of totally push away some of the things that the family that we did have is or does in society's eyes, right? There's this invisible benchmark or ideology of what is family, and it's ever changing. And it's one of those where it's funny because my family was always spread out, and we didn't see each other except for on holidays. And as we all grew older, I haven't seen my cousins in years.
Yeah.
I have cousins who have 4 children and they have children, and it's kind of like, what happened, right? The matriarch died, and now we no longer get together. It's no longer demanded that you show up for Christmas. I don't care if your brothers are fighting, you show up for Christmas. When that left, there wasn't anymore. But what I'm getting to is then there's this ideal image of what a family should look like. And if we don't stand up to that, or in society, as you said, as the influence started coming in, we either feel like, oh, it's a failure. So we kind of move things around to make it look different. And I say this because that's kind of what happened to my family. And we've always been a family, but afar. And, it's always been the good child and the dysfunctional child. And, nobody else has that going on. But yet everybody does.
Sometimes you take turns, right?
Absolutely. But but it's not talked about.
Yeah.
Right. But yet you're there. It's kind of, it's a funny, like you said, it's Jello. It's ever moving, wiggling, but yet it, in some respects, whether we like it to or not, it is stuck together until you nail it to the wall. And you can't do that. It doesn't work. So, and what everybody was saying, and kind of where I'm going with this is, I have a brother that we have never given up on. He's out there doing whatever he's doing, and he comes back and always, arms wide open, no matter what kind of chaos he has created for himself and others. And, it's one of those, it's kind of like, you're right. You always allow them back in. I used to berate myself for that. And I'm like, I'm not doing that again, because it's way too much emotion and it hurts too much. And someone told me, they said, but what if this one time is actually a time that he embraces and does what he's supposed to do and gets his life together? No regrets, right? So I went there because it's a mold that we all think there is a mold of how a family should be and operate and upstanding in society, and nobody ever has any issues. And yet that's the feeling, right, of what we want it to be. So we set out on our little path to create that, and soon realized that we're no better creating it than our parents were, because it is ever moving. So you just have to embrace the moments, and like Lisa said, it's one of those where it's all heartache, and you open your door no matter what they've done. But yeah, you can have your emotions and kind of do that. But and I've done that with my brother, but yet I've some friends who have double crossed me. I'm not talking to them again. Right? So it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah. So I want to hear some more on this one so we can put a bookend on it, but I'm seeing something, pointing towards the word responsibility for the next half hour. Like if family is what family is, you know, Bill Clinton's famous quote comes back to me. It's like, that all depends on what the definition of is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so family is one of those kinds of words too. And
Yeah.
I would like to just share a little brief conversation. I used to have a barn full of Mercedes Benzes. I had, at one point, had 5 of them in the 1990s. And so I decided I was going to sell one of them. Beautiful car. And I advertised it, you know, put it into, I think at that point it was probably the Broadcaster or whatever it was. And I got a ping from a guy in Hartford. And he invited me, you know, to come to his shop. Well, his shop was a 2,500 square foot pizza parlor. And he took me over and he sat me down and he gave me a piece of pizza and he said, Bill, I would really like to buy this car if it's in excellent shape for my daughter. I am first generation from Greece. And my daughter was born here the year that we came to the United States. She is graduating from law school this year. And what I've done, and he started to tell me about how he moved into that place and every bit of money that he got went to pay the rent. Then he bought the pizza restaurant from the guy that owned it and started it before him. Then he bought the store. Then he bought the building. Then he bought the building next door. Then he bought the building next door to that. And he walked me outside and he said, I own that. And I said, that's an impressive story. He said, nowhere as impressive as my daughter. I want to do something that will get her to notice how much she means to me. If I gave her all these buildings, that would make no difference whatsoever. She's not expecting a car. So I said, it's kind of clear to me that you're the person that needs to have this car. How much can you pay for it? Well, he made me an offer that was actually $5,000 more than I was asking. And I said, well, why would you offer me more money than I'm asking for the car? And he said, it's very simple to me. I would not give my daughter something that she ever thought that I bought at a discount. She means too much to me for that. And I said, if you're committed to that, how about I meet you halfway and you only give me $2,500 more and you give her $2,500 in the glove compartment. He said, deal. So, you know, when I think about where my experience with family over the years, most of it I've had to learn from other people's families because most of my family was in the Midwest or in Detroit. We rarely got to see those folks growing up. So we made our own family as we went along. And at this ripe old age of whatever I am right now, I still don't know for sure what family's all about. You know?
And I have a thought.
I'm listening.
Just based on what everybody's saying, doesn't it feel kind of like it's a commitment to a perceived connection that revolves around acceptance? Because, you know, like you just accept the people in your family, whether they're different from you or similar to you, and whether the connection's genetics or proximity or whatever, you know, you just made a commitment that that's important enough that you're willing to accept that person for who they are. And, you know, and then you have all the whatever, but I don't know, it just kind of feels like that. And the interesting thing to me is the fact that that's an internal thing that you can take with you and create in any circle of humans that you choose to interact with. Like I treat you guys like family. This is no different to me. It's just, you know, and if I'm in a work environment, when I was racing mountain bikes competitively, that was a family, you know, it's just, we had a commitment to something that brought us together that we all saw value in, and then we practiced acceptance towards each other. Wouldn't that be interesting if everybody just did that everywhere they went?
There are some people that do, Ken.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have a similar concept in terms of trying to describe what friends are. It's just everybody.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of them I haven't met yet, but they're all my friends. They're all my family.
Yeah.
So,
and the other thing that just struck me, the fantasy thing was, there's one of the root causes of suffering in certain traditions is expectation. And, so you have an expectation that someone's going to be a certain way or do a certain thing. And that's a construct you create in your own head that they can't or don't want to live up to. And that creates a disconnect, So there's this whole thing about letting go of expectation and just letting it be what it is. And, and you can have boundaries and all that kind of stuff and respond or not. You can choose how skillful and appropriate you want to be and what you do with that. But the reality of it is it's that expectation of what you think family should be, or expectation of what it means to be a brother or a father or a mother, whatever, that's what creates the tension a lot of times. So.
And the attachment to that fantasy.
Yep.
Like, this shouldn't be, in the
face.
Yeah,
that's the next step.
Yeah,
you letting go of those attachments. Yeah, and just trying to see it for what it is and being accepting of that. Which is, I think, for a lot of people, that's kind of what their thought of a family is. We've been talking about that. It's, you always have a place here. There's forgiveness. There's, all of that kind of stuff. Letting go of your attachment to how you think they should live their life, and instead accepting them for how they're choosing to do so.
Yes, and in certain circumstances, allowing those breakdowns to become the past, as opposed to consistently bringing them into the present to remind somebody else of the failure in your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, is, I think, where, inside of me, the feeling I have is that's where the gold is, especially for me personally. Forgiving somebody and forgetting, those two things, have to come in equal parts as far as I'm concerned. But I know people that stack up experiences like bricks, next to the wall, that can be in a moment hurled at whoever it is that they, have felt affronted by.
That's really interesting. I have the opposite approach. It's forgiving and remembering. It's recognizing all the things, it's letting go of some form of judgment or whatever to it, but not forgetting it so that patterns don't get repeated. And also I can make a determination for myself if this is what level of interaction, engagement, and trust there's going to be with this person based on their history.
Yes. And
it's almost paradoxical. So it's interesting because it's kind of a very powerful thing to remember. You did me wrong. I still love you, but I'm not going to let you do me wrong like that again. I'm not going to forget it. I'm going to remember it. And I'm going to create space to continue to extend opportunities for different choices to be made or whatever. It's kind of an interesting, I've always felt uncomfortable with forgive and forget.
Again,
if you don't remember, you're setting yourself up for it again.
They're absolutely words.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to bring to everybody's attention is that we are at the top of the half hour. And it sounds to me, Ken, like you're diving full into what's the responsibility for how family worked or didn't work.
Yeah.
Shall we wrap this and then restart and bring it over to the other side?
Let's do it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thumbs up.
Okay, that's all right. Hi, y'all. You better come back.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.